Good morning, Calvert High School family. This is Dr. Nathan Kimbrough, and I'm new to Calvert High School, so I just want to say real quick that it's an absolute honor to me to be able to speak in front of you this morning during advisory. And the whole point of this message is to piggyback off of the message that Coach Snee talked to us about back in September, where we talked about impacting lives and finding your purpose. And I don't have a lot of time here with you today, so I'm going to do that through two different stories, okay? One of the stories that have impacted my life, one of the stories is an observation that I was lucky enough to have about 4 or 5 years ago about two different funerals of two men I barely knew and who never met one another. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the similarities that I noticed when I was attending these funerals. And the second story that I wanted to talk to you about is an opportunity that I had when I was your age to visit St. Jude's Children's Hospital and how that impacted my life and changed my life forever. So for the first story, guys, about 5 years ago, I had an opportunity in about a 6-month span. There were two men that I barely knew. They were friends of the family that had passed away. And so I was kind of sitting in the pews. And again, I barely knew them. So I was sitting in the pews just kind of making observations at these two different funerals. And here's one thing to kind of note about both of these men. One of the men was a very, very rich man. He was a very, very successful businessman. He had all kinds of cars. He had he had multiple homes. He had a big bank account. Basically, by every measuring stick of success that we have in this world, he had hit it. He was very, very successful, right? By all the things that we think mean success. And then the other man was a very quaint man. He lived in he was kind of like lower middle class, lived in a very small home. He drove the same Honda Civic for about 20 years, okay? So it was interesting kind of sitting in these pews and looking and watching these observations with these two different funerals. And this is what I noticed. During the rich man's funeral, at no point, when people kind of get up and speak about the person, at no point during the rich man's funeral did anybody get up and speak about the cars that the rich man owned. And he had plenty of them to talk about. And at no point during the poor man's funeral did anybody get up and talk about that Honda Civic he drove. At no point in the rich man's funeral did anybody get up and talk about the extravagant homes that this man owned. And at no point in the poor man's funeral did anybody get up and talk about the small, quaint home that this man lived in for most of his adult life. At no point in the rich man or the poor man's funeral did anybody get up and speak about the money that one had and that one didn't have. You know, which is kind of ironic because in the world, that's what we put all our weight on, is all that money and all these things, right? Like that, I mean, by every measuring stick out there, this rich man had them all. But when it came down to it, that's not what people talked about. 100% of the people that got up and spoke at the rich man's funeral and the poor man's funeral all spoke about the same thing. They all spoke about the impacts that these men had on their life. See, it almost makes you think that to be rich isn't to have a bunch of things. It isn't to chase the money, but it's actually to impact other people's lives, because when you're gone, that's what they're going to stand up and talk about. And what's interesting, guys, like adults, one thing I always say about adults, man, is like we're real good at like putting on our mask, right? Like sometimes with adults, what you see is not what you get, because like we've kind of hardened our shell a little bit. We've gone through life as good, bad, and ugly, and sometimes that can harden us up a little bit. And so we're real good at putting on our mask in public and maybe, smiling, and sometimes we don't want to smile, sometimes faking it till we make it, right? But one thing I have noticed the older I've gotten is that the one time that adults, as we will take off our mask at this one time, and that is when we lose somebody that we care about. That is when we are willing to be vulnerable. That is when we are willing to speak what is really important to us. And what is it in that moment when we take off our mask, when we are as vulnerable as we can be, when we're speaking about people that we care about? What is it that we talk about? We talk about the impacts, because that, at the end of the day, is what's most important. And so, guys, let me share with you the second story, because this is a very personal story that changed the trajectory of my life forever, and I'll never forget this week, okay, this particular week. So I grew up, guys, you might be able to tell, I'm not from Calvert County. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. And I don't want to date myself too much, but I did grow up in the 90s in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the neighborhood I grew up in, teenagers were we kind of had a bad name. Okay, we kind of had a bad name. And I grew up, when I was about 17, 18 years old, I had a mentor. His name was Jeff. He was about 5 years older than me. And Jeff had some profound things happen to him, when he was younger. He had a best friend die in a car accident, and so it changed his life, and he wanted to start making a difference in young people's lives in our community. And he lived 2 doors down from me, and with him being a little bit older than me, it was just kind of a natural fit. He just really became my mentor. And so I just kind of hitched my wagon to him, and we just started to kind of like do some things in the community to help change the narrative of the teenagers and our reputations. Like we might show up, like we might go to like elderly neighborhoods and rake leaves. We would go to the hospital and we'd find out who hasn't been visited, and we would go visit people and we would read to them. Just anything to enrich other people's lives, because that in turn enriched ours. But there was one time that Jeff and I, we were kind of sitting around one day and we were kind of hanging out, and we were kind of thinking, man, what can we do to kind of get out even more in the community? Well, we decided that we were going to do this simple thing as a puppet show. We went out and bought these puppets, went to a thrift store, and we had all these puppets, and we wanted to do a puppet show. And so we had some members of the community. They had built us a stage out of this like PVC pipe, and you could put like a little curtain around it, and it was real lightweight, so we could move it a lot of different places. So we would take Jeff and I, and then we would have a couple other people kind of in a little group, and we had a church that would allow us to do our like voiceovers so that we could actually do this puppet show. So we would take this puppet show on the road, man. Like we would go to the mall. Sometimes we get some funny looks. We didn't care because we knew what we were doing was a good thing. But we would go to the mall. We'd go to like Myrtle Beach. We'd set this thing up on the beach, and we'd have kids come up. We'd do the puppet show, and it was really enriching, man. It was awesome, right? Well, we were sitting in the hotel room one night, and we're watching TV while we're in Myrtle Beach, and a commercial for St. Jude's Children's Hospital comes on. And so Jeff kind of looks at me and he's like, man, we should take this puppet show to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And I'm like, let's do it. I'm all about well, why not, man? Let's do something out of our comfort zone. I mean, we were riding high, so we wanted to make a difference in as many lives as we possibly could. So as we got back to Greensboro, so he calls the general manager. For those that don't know, I'm sure most of you do, that St. Jude's Children's Hospital is a hospital full of kids with cancer, and they don't turn anybody away, no matter how much money you do or don't have. They are there to help and serve. All right, so we call up, Jeff calls the general manager one day, and he's like, hey, we got this puppet show. I'm sure the guy thought we were crazy, right? He was like, hey, we got this puppet show. We want to bring it into the hospital, and we want to cheer up as many kids as we can. And the general manager is like, man, that's really nice. We really appreciate it. We get a lot of calls from a lot of groups throughout the country. Unfortunately, white blood cell counts are a thing, and we have to respectfully say no. Well, here's the thing. He would later tell us he didn't know who he was dealing with, and that's true. So Jeff hung up that phone, and he told me what the general manager said, and this is what Jeff and I decided. I said, look, we weren't going to take no for an answer, all right? So Jeff said, look, I'll call in the morning. You call in the afternoon. Now, we didn't have cell phones. This is like, we had to call on landlines. I know that's kind of archaic, but that's what we had to do. So we weren't trying to be rude or anything. We were just trying to wear this dude down until he finally said yes, right? So for about 2 weeks go by with Jeff calling in the morning and me calling in the afternoon, and finally the general manager relented and he said, all right, you guys can come. But here's the thing. You can only be on the first floor or the second floor balcony, all right? And that's important to remember because, guys, I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if it's still this way, but it was back then. But St. Jude's is degenerative. So in other words, the floors, the higher you go, it's degenerative as you go higher. So the higher the floor you're on, the worse the disease is impacting you. Okay? So we could have that first floor and the second floor balcony, which we were fine, right? And guys, let me tell you something. If you ever need a perspective changer, walk through the lobby of St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Nothing like seeing a bunch of bald-headed little girls and boys whose cancer's in remission, who all they want to do is play. It will make the most narcissistic person forget about all of their problems and will put a smile on your face. And so we were really excited. So they set us up in the chapel of the hospital, okay, of the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Now, the chapel is basically like the church inside of the actual hospital. And you can imagine that the chapel at St. Jude's Children's Hospital is a very popular place. Okay, so we were there from Saturday to Saturday. So Saturday we go in, I mean, we are hyped, right? We put our puppet show stage up. We put the puppet show on. We got kids singing. I mean, it was on fire. I mean, even by Sunday, the very next day, the word had gotten all around the entire hospital, and our crowd was standing room only, and it was like we were loving it. I mean, it was great. Well, Monday comes around and we do our morning show. We go ahead and put our morning show on for our puppet show. And then after that's done, everybody clears out. And then once everybody clears out, it's just me, Jeff, the general manager, and then there's a man standing in the back of the room. And he's got this like mullet on. He had a hat on, he had taken it off, but he's got like this mullet on. So he walks up to us and he asked us, he said, hey, listen, guys. He said, you know, everybody's talking about this puppet show that you guys are putting on throughout the hospital. And he said, listen, my son can't come down here, but could you go up to him and put on that puppet show? Because he's heard about it. So we look at the general manager and we're like, man, can we do it? Can we do it? You know, it's good. And so the general manager said, what floor is your son on? And the man kind of looked down and he looked back up and he said, well, he's on the 5th floor. And so the general manager kind of looked, you know, he was like, looked at us and he said, listen, 2 of you can go, but not the whole team. So Jeff and I were allowed to go. So Jeff and I were like, okay, that's cool. This is great, right? So let me kind of paint this picture for you, okay? So we get on the elevator at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We go up to the 5th floor, okay? We walk out of the elevator and we look to our left and there's a sink for you to wash your hands, okay? So we wash our hands. We walk 10 feet to Eric's room. The young man's name was Eric. And we walked 10 feet to Eric's room. Haven't touched anything. This is on the outside of the door. All right, there's a sink and you got to wash your hands. So when you open up the door to go into Eric's room, you look to your left and you can probably guess there's another sink and you have to wash your hands. And this is when it's starting to set in just how serious this is. And Eric was cold at the time. They had him like wrapped up in these like ace bandages to help keep him warm, and he was underneath his covers. And so what Jeff did, Jeff stood by his head and narrated while we kind of propped up the foot of the bed, and I used the foot of the bed to do the puppet show. And it was really awesome, guys. Like you could hear him cackling and laughing, and it was a lot of fun. We got a lot of stuff out of it, right? And so the dad thanked us when we were done and we left, all right? And over the next couple days, Jeff and I had the opportunity to visit like the Ronald McDonald House, which is where the families would say that didn't have necessarily the financial support they needed, so they were able to stay there for free. And so it was just a really fulfilling experience. Well, on Thursday, we get a call from the hospital at the hotel. And we were told that Eric had passed. And Jeff and I were the only ones that saw Eric. And it was a very fulfilling week. And we didn't want to be, we didn't want to be too negative or too down in front of everybody else because there were so many other positive things. We were doing our best to try to stay positive even though we heard this negative news. So, but anyway, so the next day on Friday was our last day there. And this is the day that I'll never forget. We had made our way up to the 2nd floor balcony, and that's where we had done our last show. And that PVC pipe, that stage that I was telling you about, I was trying to break that down. Jeff was getting some stuff together. It was just Jeff and I. And I'm down on one knee, and I'll never forget this. I'm down on one knee, and the PVC pipe on the corner, it's stuck. I can't get it out. So I'm sitting there trying to pull it out. I'm on one knee, and I hear Jeff go, Nate, stand up. And I'm down there, I'm like, Jeff, man, we got an itinerary. I'm working on this. This thing's really stuck. I can't get it undone. Nate, stand up. Jeff, man, come on, man. We on an itinerary. We on a tight schedule. We got stuff to do. Nathan, stand up. And when he said it like that, I knew something was up because Jeff never used that tone. So I stood up and I looked up. And coming towards me was that same man with that same mullet, with tears in his eyes. It was Eric's father. He had to come back and sign some paperwork and say goodbye to his son. Eric's father walked up to Jeff and I, and he hugged both of us at the same time. I have never, ever been hugged as tight as he hugged me, and he said these words to me. He said, I want to thank you for making a difference in the last week of my son's life. Now guys, that might not have done it for you, but that did it for me. I don't have a lot of quotes, guys, but my favorite quote's by Mark Twain, and it goes like this. The 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. That day, I found my why. Now, I didn't know all the details. I didn't, again, being from Greensboro, North Carolina, I didn't know that I was going to be in Calvert County. I didn't know that I was going to end up moving up here. I didn't know that I was going to be blessed enough to be in front of this school, in front of this population. I didn't know all that. But here's what I did know. I knew that in some way, shape, or form, I was going to impact others' lives. And here's what I'm going to challenge you guys to do, guys. We got a lot of negativity going on in this world. We got a lot of things that go on in this world trying to divide us. And here's what my challenge is. Stop trying to change the world. Start trying to change your world. Start trying to impact people around you. Start trying to change the lives, even just through example, around you. Because here's what happened, guys. When you change someone else's life, that changes you. And then you subconsciously give others the courage to do the very same thing around you. You are the first domino that can fall in your world. You are perfectly placed to change people's lives, people that I can never reach. They are in your life that you could. And I can tell you right now, guys, if you're out there, you're young and you don't know why you're on this earth, because I'm going to tell you right now, every single one of you are special. Every single one of you are special. Every single one of you have a specific purpose that only you can live. There are people in your life that only you can touch. And guys, I can tell you right now, once you start changing others' lives, it will change you. You want to change a culture? You want to change a county? You want to change a state? You want to change a country? You want to change a world? Start changing your world. And that will give everybody else courage to do the same. Be the first domino of your friends to fall. Show them what it's like. Because guys, I can tell you right now, there is no greater calling on this earth. There is no depth that you can reach by any drug, by any alcohol, by any touchdown you score or game-winning three you make or any race you can run. The most important thing you can do in this life to find your purpose is to help impact others' lives. Because there's a depth that you reach doing that you can't reach doing anything else. So with this, guys, I'm going to tell you, every single day, wake up, seek your opportunities, make your differences, and change lives. Guys, again, I'm Dr. Nate Kimbrough. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to email me. My email is kimbroughin@calvertnet.k12.md.us. If you are watching this video and you don't think anybody cares about you, you are wrong. There's a whole staff here at Calvert High School yearning to make a difference in your life. So please make sure you use it. I can't wait to see you guys. I can't wait to be around you guys. And I hope that time comes sooner than later. With that, guys, I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I will talk to you soon.